Are you considering divorce? Are you dealing with it now? Are you on the other side and not sure what comes next? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Divorce Do's and Don'ts Show with your host, Lisa C. Decker.
Welcome back, everyone. We're so happy to have you here for another episode of the Divorce Do's and Don'ts Show. I'm your host, Lisa C. Decker, and I am a certified divorce financial analyst, a real estate collaboration specialist in divorce, and a certified amicable divorce professional with a special designation in financials. And I am also the CEO and founder of Divorce Money Matters and DivorceTown USA, who brings you this show. We are so happy to have you here today, and we have a couple of great guests. This is going to be an excellent show. So as you may know, I hope you know from watching our shows, that January is International Child-Centered Divorce Month. And today we continue with that important theme as we discuss co-parenting dilemmas and, even more importantly, solutions. Our guests today are Diane Dierks, a marriage and family therapist, as well as the executive director of the Center for Navigating Family Change. She has been working with co-parents for more than 20 years. She and her co-host, Rick Voyles, have a podcast called Co-Parent Dilemmas, where they respond to listener questions about how to deal with an impossible co-parent. This is going to be a great show. Diane's co-host, Rick Voyles, also joins us today. Rick is the CEO of the Center for Dispute Resolutions, as well as a certified business coach and anger management specialist, and a professional mediator. Rick travels internationally, training and developing federal mediators in their agency ADR programs. He is a published author, business coach, and entrepreneur. We are in for a treat today because we have two fabulous experts who have lots of experience in this world of divorce, and they are going to be sharing some great information. So welcome to both of you to the show today.
Thank you, Lisa. We're glad to be here.
It is my pleasure to have you here. So Diane, you and Rick just published a companion journal for your podcast, which is called I Am Non-Impossible, a 12-week journey to co-parenting peace. And in it, you follow a concept with the acronym of D.R.A.G.O.N. Could you please share, what does D.R.A.G.O.N stand for? Let's start there.
Okay. Well, first of all, the book, we decided that a companion to the podcast was important because you can listen to a podcast and listen to a question and answer and walk away and go, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And then 5 minutes later, get a difficult text from your co-parent and you're back into the same old habit. And it occurred to us that parents needed to develop better habits, just like if you were trying to lose weight. You know, you can listen to a commercial or read something on the internet and go, okay, I need to do that. I need to exercise more and eat my fruits and vegetables. And it sounds like a great idea, but when it comes down to really doing it, you fall back into your regular old habits. So we wanted parents to have a way to listen to the podcast and then write down their thoughts about their own dilemmas and how it might relate to certain episodes that we point them to, and begin to think differently, change their lifestyle and their way of thinking. And D.R.A.G.O.N is the way that we do it when Rick and I look at different dilemmas, even when we're staffing a case in our organization. We seem to go through this process. So one day we sat down and said, what is our process? And when we figured out what that process really was, and then we put some letters to it to make it memorable, we decided that it would be a good idea to try to teach parents our own process of how do we help parents go through the steps to figure out how to think differently and better regarding their conflict and how to protect their kids.
Fantastic. So is it relevant to all co-parents or only in certain situations? And why don't you share some of the success stories with using it and tell us a little more about it?
Yeah. Rick, you want to talk a little bit about the episode that we did where we featured the D.R.A.G.O.N concept?
Yes. So in terms of who it applies to, there's two types of models for co-parenting. One is a cooperative. That's where both people have really good communication skills. They're able to be flexible. They have a whole lot of negotiation going on, and they're willing to cooperate with each other. The other side of that coin is what we call a parallel model. This is usually a high conflict co-parent situation where at least one person, sometimes both of them, are unwilling to work together. Communication is fraught with stress, anger, hostility, conflict. So flexibility actually causes more problems than it solves. And negotiation just really doesn't work well at all. And the drive then that we understand is conflict hurts the children. And so we want to minimize the conflict. So we're speaking to, and the journal is designed to help that high conflict co-parent model and teach them more of a parallel style of how to co-parent.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And are we going to get to hear about this dragon? You're keeping us in suspense.
Yes. Well, it's a magical dragon. And do wonderful things.
He throws out his magical dust and everybody gets sick.
That's right. So with the letters, we talk about D, and what we want you to do is describe the dilemma that you're in to yourself. I mean, concretize it. What is the dilemma that I'm having? And then with R, we're talking about take a moment to reframe. Consider that your assumptions about what the other motives of the other parent would be might not be completely true. There might be another way to look at this. And that's probably the hardest part to do because we're so used to, oh, I know you, I know how you're going to behave, I understand what you're really doing. But take a moment, might they be afraid of something? Might their drive or motivation be different than, might you be wrong? Is there a small chance that you might be wrong about their motivation? And then the next one, we want to focus on you. What is your anxiety about this that's going on? What's the risk of loss? If nothing is done or nothing changes or this keeps going on into the future, what detrimental things could happen that you are worried about or afraid of? Now, with that in mind, once I have those two things, I can start to think about my goal. But the goal is for the child. What then in this dilemma would be my goal for my child as an outcome? And then next, thinking about what can I do to reach that goal? That's our opportunity. And I'm thinking of various ways of ensuring that there is a direct path to accomplishing the goal that I have for my child, regardless of what the other parent does or does not do. That sets me up then with a plan B we talk about a lot, that if the other parent won't agree with you, what can you do? And there's always something you can do to ensure that your child's need is met. And then that sets you up to be able to negotiate because your child can't lose. You've already got a plan in place that your child's going to be taken care of. Now, if I want to offer or ask for something from the other parent, if they say yes, great. If they say no, great. And that's a way to think through their own dilemma and crisis and develop that habit so that they're automatically thinking of these things when they get that negative text or that dehumanizing voicemail or in that fight that they're having right now. Can I work my way through this process and come to an outcome that protects my boundaries and meets my child's need?
That is phenomenal. And what a great acronym to be able to remember that, because in the heat of the moment, like you were saying, Diane, those things go by the wayside. You can't remember what the steps are, right? But I can just see fire-breathing dragon and just pull myself right back into the moment and go through that acronym. That is wonderful.
Well, we call that slaying the dragon, right? Slaying
the dragon. There you go.
Because there's a lot of fear. And if you can face that fear and work through this in a practical manner, then the emotional side of your brain can kind of take a back seat And then you can think through it in a different way. In I think it was episode 65, we had a listener write in about doctor office drama. Do you remember that one, Rick?
Yes.
And his dilemma was that he wanted to attend his toddler's doctor's appointments, but it was very difficult because the mom made it difficult for him. And he would show up and then they would get into it in the waiting room. And then the child would, be anxious. And then the doctor was frustrated. And he wanted to know, what should he do? Should he just not go? Or should he, find another way to do this? Should he force it? Ultimately, the question is always, should I take this to court? Right. And that's always my last piece of advice, because the court is like walking into a casino most of the time. I got a handful of money and I could win, but who knows, chances are they'll just take my money and I'll leave and I'll be in the same place I was before I walked in the door.
You're not kidding.
Yeah. So when you walk through a dilemma like that, we can describe what his conflict is, but reframing that isn't really about necessarily giving mom the benefit of the doubt. We think that's a good thing to think about, but it's more or less about how you communicate. Reframing so that you don't communicate in a way that alienates the other parent more. And so is there a way that he can communicate with mom so that he is polite and respectful to her, that inspires her to want to communicate with him? And that's one of the biggest problems that we see with people. They want to attack, they want to accuse, Johnny said you did this, how dare you? Which isn't giving the parent any benefit of the doubt, even if in your brain, you think they absolutely did what Johnny said they did. It's more important to say, Johnny said this, but I doubt it's true. I just wanted to check it out with you first. That's more likely to get someone to continue to read your message. So in the reframe, it's more than just reframing how you think about the other parent, but how do you reframe your communication and get into a better habit of doing that so that they'll actually read what you write? And that's a huge part of it. The anxiety that this dad had was that he was not going to be able to take care of his child's medical needs, that he wasn't going to know about them. She wasn't going to share them with him. She would alienate him from the doctor. And that is I understand that fear, but it's somewhat irrational. That there are ways to find out information. There are ways to communicate with a professional that doesn't require him to be standing there every time the child has a sniffle and ends up in the doctor's office. So identifying that anxiety and saying, okay, is this really a rational anxiety, or is this something that I can overcome? Is there another way around that I can go around this so that I can reduce my anxiety? And really the goal, he had a great goal for the child. I want my child's medical needs met. Does that require you to be the one to take the child? Does it require you to be there every time? What does it require for your child to get his or her medical needs met? And I think that requires information. So how do I get information? Can I get it without being there? And then when I'm with my child at my house, what can I do to make sure that my child is healthy? On my end, I'm more in control of that. And then the opportunity, there's many opportunities here to come up with a plan B. I will ask mom if I can possibly come to every other appointment. Maybe we can trade taking the child to the appointment so that we're not in the same place at the same time. That would be a negotiation. What if mom says no? If she has final say on medical needs, if she says no, that won't work for me, how can I get the information without her permission? Am I able to contact the doctor myself? Can I go in and have a consultation with the doctor myself? And so once you know what you'll do if the other parent says no, then you're free to negotiate. And so as you walk through those steps each time, the problem doesn't seem so large. We've had parents say they're frustrated because the other parent won't take the child to birthday parties on their turn or their time. And the child really wants to go. He's at that age where birthday parties are a big deal. You can beg and cajole and say, oh, I'll come pick him up and I'll take him and I'll buy the gift and I'll bring him back. And please, please, please let him go to his parties. And the other parent can very powerfully say, no, it's my time. I'm not taking him. I don't want him to go. Mm-hmm. And that's disappointing, not only for the parent, but for the child. But we've had parents say they've told their child, next week when I have you, we'll invite that child over and we'll have our own little birthday party for them. So you can still celebrate your friend's birthday. Is that a perfect solution? No. But it is a solution. And that's something your child will remember for a very long time, that when dad or mom would not let him go to a birthday party with his best friend's birthday, that my other parent said, we're going to make this special, even if your other parent won't participate. And in the long run, those are the things that are memorable. That doesn't require the permission of the other parent to give your child what he or she needs.
It's very empowering for the parent is the ultimate goal.
Well, you know, we talked a lot about how we can only control ourselves, not the other person.
Right.
And that's in any situation, right? So this gives folks a wonderful tool to help them craft their response in the situation at hand. So I'm really loving this. I'm so glad you guys are here today sharing this.
And sometimes the plan B is simply a conversation with your child. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you can't fix it, but if you can talk to your child and say, you know, every time I show up at your school event, your mom approaches me and fights with me. I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't go to the school event. What do you think? And if I don't go, how can I find out what happened at the school event? And maybe I'll ask Mrs. Jones, who, you know, was going to be there, to video it for me. And then the next time you come over, we'll watch a video together of your event or your activity. I have a great deal of respect for parents who say, you know, maybe I won't call you every weekend when you're at the other parent's house because it seems like you're on speakerphone and your parent is standing over you, listening to everything you're saying. Maybe that's not the best way for us to communicate. Those are parents who are thinking about, what does my child need from me? Not what are my rights as a parent, but how can I make my child's world more like a child's world? And I may have to make some sacrifices. But again, those are the things the kids will remember for the rest of their lives, because that meant you were taking them out of the conflict. So I'm not saying that's easy, and I'm not saying it's fair, but it helps to resolve those issues in your brain when you're just beating your head against the wall at every turn and conflict keeps ensuing no matter what you do. There has to be another way to view it. And we have a way, I think, that you can view it without conflict.
Well, I think it's important how you framed that, you know, you talk to the child, you're not putting blame on the other parent. You're not talking derogatory. You're just stating a fact.
Yes.
And this is a way to deal with this conflict in a way that is healthier for everyone. And
yes.
I'm looking at other solutions. What appeals to you as the child, right? What would make you feel more comfortable? Right. And that, therefore, you're taking the high road. You're taking value in giving your child impetus to speak to you about it. There's value in their opinion, and you're coming up with a solution together. And yes. That is very powerful. And you're also modeling for your child on yes. how to handle those kinds of things. So,
sure.
Yes.
Well, what do you suggest for someone whose co-parent seems determined to keep them in conflict? Sometimes, you know, the best of intentions don't work because the other side is going to make life miserable no matter what.
Rick, I'll let you take this one.
There's only really, I think, one thing you can do, and that is work on developing healthy divorcing boundaries. Clarify what is healthy for you, and then stick to those boundaries, especially in an area of communication. We have what we call an structured email protocol that structures communication, and that allows me to be able to keep my boundaries, create some space between us so I can get some peace of mind, get my life back a little bit. But that is really, I think, because you can't change the other person And when I'm working with difficult co-parents, I try to make it clear that other person's never going to change, or at least you need to organize your responses in your life as though they're never going to change. So what are you going to do to protect yourself, to make sure you're safe and can live a healthy life post-divorce?
And keep your sanity through it all. Exactly. Well, sometimes people get frustrated and they just stop communicating completely with the other parent. And as you know, this feeds the conflict beast and often leads to courtroom situations. And we all know that leaving your life up to a judge or a jury is not a good thing to do. It's a crapshoot, and it will cost a lot of money and create more angst in everyone's lives. Yeah. But what advice can you give to someone who finds themselves in this situation?
Well, first of all, we don't advocate that you ghost your co-parent or stop communicating. That looks bad in the courtroom. A judge does not want to hear that you have just gone silent and won't talk to your co-parent. What happens, though, is we call this the double bind. Oftentimes parents will say, well, I'm gonna give in to you because I'm pretty sure if I give in to you, when it's time for me to want something, you'll give it back to me. That quid pro quo, right? When 9 times out of 10 in high conflict situations, when you give in, they ask for an extra day on the schedule, you say, sure. And then 3 weeks later, you need an extra day. And they say, what, are you crazy? I'm not giving you an extra day. And then you get your feelings hurt. Well, now I'm getting stomped on. I give them an inch, and the next time they want a mile. Well, you gave me this extra day 3 weeks ago. Why are you holding the ground now? Why won't you give me another 2 days this week? I don't understand. And that frustrates you. So the natural thing to do is to put up the very strong boundary and say, I'm not giving you anything ever again. And then you go silent on them, and then they start crying foul. Well, now you're not co-parenting with me. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you don't set the boundary, they take advantage of you. If you do set the boundary, they tell the court you won't be a good co-parent, and it just frustrates everybody. And so when we talk about this in some of our classes, people are always nodding their head. Yes, that's exactly where I am. What do I do about it? And what you have to do about it, like Rick said, is set a schedule, say, this is when I'm going to talk to you. Once a week through email, we will have our discussion in a 24-hour period. And then I'm not going to answer your texts throughout the week, and put that boundary up. If someone ghosts you and refuses to talk to you, there's nothing you can do about it, but you still send your email once a week. Because you always want to look as if you are still sharing information. You are still communicating with the other parent, even when they refuse to communicate with you. And sometimes that puts the children in the middle because you can't get an answer out of the other parent. That's why it's so very important to have a solid parenting plan in place that doesn't have a lot of loopholes in it, that's very clear about who's to do what and when and on what time and what days and when the exchange is and where the exchange is. All of that is your fallback plan. If the other parent stops talking to you, will you still know what to do via the plan? And then you simply just follow the plan. So it's not about how do I get the other parent to do what they're supposed to do. It's how do I put things in place so that I always know what I'm going to do, and then I'm always perceived as doing my part. And that a good parenting plan is required, and so is the structured way of communicating. And when you have those two things in place, you really can't fail on your end.
Excellent advice. Do you want to add anything to that, Rick?
The best boundary is a good parenting plan. The parenting plan exists in order to define upcoming behaviors or questions, but the plan is designed to protect you and your children. So a lot of people think, well, I need to show flexibility, and deviation is the hallmark of cooperation. But if you're in a high conflict situation, cooperation isn't going to work. You end up in the double bind. So to be able to stick to the plan represents structured consistency. And that's not only healthy for children, it's also healthy for adults.
And unfortunately, a lot of adults didn't grow up with that structured discipline. So it gets very difficult.
And there are times, when we say, every once in a while, you should deviate from the plan because life happens. So when, grandma's dying and you want to take your kids to say their last goodbye to grandma, I hope the other parent doesn't say, sorry, it's my weekend,
Right.
And you hopefully say, yes, of course, without any inkling that you'll ever get that in return. But that's a values decision. You do that because it's the right thing to do. So oftentimes we do things just simply because they're right, not because it's fair. And that's one of the hardest things for parents to wrap their head around, is they want things to be fair. And, that's a 10-year-old concept. When you're 10, you fight about fairness, but when you're 40, you have to kind of give that up. But we see people resort to those childlike values that we should divide the pie in pieces that make us both happy. And life just doesn't work that way.
There's truth in that. Well, then, we can sometimes have the opposite situation be true. And some co-parents drown in the other constant communications, often negative. How can a co-parent set those proper boundaries and still keep the lines of communication appropriately open? I know you talked about setting certain times during the week. Does all of that need to be written into the parenting plan? I will only accept communications other than emergencies, obviously, during this time, and I will only respond during this time.
Yeah, we have a sample order that outlines the email protocol that, doesn't cover every possibility, but that I think it is helpful to have it in a court order. As far as the over communicator, when we get anybody in our organization that comes to us for co-parenting help, almost invariably one person is the over communicator, the other person is the under communicator. And that's probably how they were in their marriage. And that's going to persist even post-divorce. So we try to get the over communicator to tamp that down and the under communicator to bring that up so that they're somewhat balanced. But we have some mantras that we teach people to use. Rick, why don't you tell them what some of those are?
Yes, for like the email protocol, if they deviate outside of it, right, they're trying to hook you into answering something. One of the mantras we like is, I got your communication. I will be glad to talk to you about that at our scheduled time, whatever the scheduled time is, Sunday at 9 p.m. Now they're going to come back and say, no, you need to talk to me now. And so I'll be glad to talk to you about that in our scheduled meeting coming up this Sunday. And you just repeat that no matter how hard they keep trying to push you outside of your structured boundary. That's probably one of our favorite. Another one that I like that I've used a lot in my divorce was, thank you. They share an opinion with you. You need to do this. You should do that. And you have to. Thanks for letting me know. I'll take that into consideration. And then walk away or redirect or something, but get out of the conversation. I'll take it into consideration. Thanks for letting me know.
Very simple and easy.
In our episode 4, was it 4? I think it was 4.
The narcissist one. Yeah.
How to respond to a narcissist. We give about 20 different responses to different types of communication. So we would point people to that episode if you want more on that.
Well, speaking of that, as we wrap up here, why don't you let folks know how to find you?
Sure. We're on Apple, Spotify, Google, you name it. Anywhere you get your podcast, you can find us, Co-Parent Dilemmas, or you can reach us at our website at cpdilemmas.com.
Wonderful. Thank you both for being guests today. This was a great conversation. I look forward to learning more about it in the future. I'll be tuning into your podcast. I want to learn more.
Thank you, Lisa.
My pleasure. And before we leave, at DivorceTown USA, you can download the DivorceTown roadmap you see here, which includes an ebook that explains each of these options, helps you understand which one is best for you and your family, and outlines other professionals and or resources you may need to access along the way. And as you can see, we have right at the top there, Put Kids First Parkway, because we believe in putting the children's needs first. And slide number 2 here, we're going to talk about the DivorceTown Marketplace, also found at DivorceTownUSA.com. And this has been designed to bring you some of the best books, products, and resources we've found throughout our years to help you with your divorce so you can thrive long after. And you can see all of the different areas that we have on there. DivorceTown USA also sponsors a virtual divorce help and hope support group through meetup.com, which meets once or twice a month via Zoom, and the meeting dates and times are always listed in the events section at DivorceTown USA. And then at Divorce Money Matters, you can download your free divorce financial fitness kit. I created this to help you get better organized and take more control of your money matters during your divorce. This kit includes an ebook, a working Excel spreadsheet of all the documents you'll need to gather, and a list of 50 must-ask questions for when you're ready to meet with a family law attorney. Spoiler alert, we are updating and improving the kit, so stay tuned for details on the new kit. There we have it, but coming up soon, a new kit. And next week, in continuing with the International Child-Centered Divorce Month, we're going to be interviewing our guest, Leanne Abel, who co-authored the book Primal Loss, The Now Adult Children of Divorce Speak. And you don't want to miss this episode because she is going to share some fabulous information with real life examples and a lot of things to consider that you may not have thought about. So we hope you found this week's episode of the Divorce Do's and Don'ts show helpful. And we look forward to seeing you all next week and every week as we continue to improve the world, the way the world divorces, one family at a time.